SCORE mentor. And we have with us a wonderful group of people who are going to talk about businesses, and I'll let them introduce themselves once we get started. But first, a word about SCORE Cleveland. Excuse me. So SCORE, as you may know, if you're a client, our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities, and we do this through mentoring and education. We hope that every small business owner has the support and resources that they need to be successful. We are very much aware that small businesses drive the national economy. More than 90% of businesses are small businesses, and they employ over 50% of the workforce. So SCORE is a network of free volunteers. We're throughout the USA. So you can find a SCORE office practically in any city across the country. There are approximately 10,000 mentors. So if we in the Cleveland area can't find a mentor that really matches your needs, we can call on any one of those 10,000 other people to help you out. So we can always find a mentor for you. We have people from all different backgrounds as clients. About 10% of our clients are veterans, and about 54% are women. So that makes me very happy. So what we offer are mentoring, one-on-one mentoring, which we're still doing mostly remotely. We also provide webinars like the ones that we're doing tonight, but we also have on our website a large number of recorded webinars, and we record them as we go along. So our biggest asset, I think, is our resource portal, our website. If you go there, cleveland.score.org, you'll find all kinds of recorded webinars, articles, blogs, plus a list of all our upcoming webinars. So take some time and go and look at it. Our services are all free. We get a great deal of our funding from the Small Business Administration, but we also get funding from a number of businesses in the Cleveland area who want to support small businesses. This is a shot of our website. If you go there, you can sign up to have a mentor. You can take a workshop, browse the library. Again, I encourage you to go and take a look at it. And I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and I'm going to turn it over to Therese McGrody, and she's going to introduce what they're going to do this evening.
Well, thank you very much, Anita, for having us in. And thank you, everyone that has shown up tonight and people that are going to be watching this in the future. My name is Therese McGrody. I'm a franchise consultant. I work with a company called FranNet. We have partnered with SCORE for many, many years. And we appreciate the partnership that we have with them. As a matter of fact, today I talked to someone from California that had seen a FranNet webinar on their portal, and you know, he called me and he had some questions about opening a franchise, and I was able to help him. So SCORE has some amazing resources. So as I said, I'm a franchise consultant. Really, what I do is I help people explore franchise business ownership. I help them. You know, we talk about values, motives, goals, lifestyle, budget, and we find a franchise that really fits what you want a business to do for you. A lot of people talk about passion, but sometimes you have to talk more about passion is important, but being passionate about the role of the owner and not always necessarily just passion for the business. With me tonight is, for starters, Jim Gray. He owns his own consulting company. And we're going to be talking about business ownership. How do you start a business from the ground? And we're going to talk to also Chris Goebel, who is a business broker. He helps people buy existing businesses. And we're going to talk with Tracy Rickman, who owns, actually, she owns FranNet of Northern Ohio, and she also owns about 3 other franchises. So we have a wealth of experience on this webinar tonight. So, you know, a lot of people, when they start their own business, Jim, there's so many different ways that people can do it. They can start, you know, a daycare. They can start a gas station, automotive repair. They can, some even start a manufacturing business. So could you tell us a little bit about how you started your business?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Jim Gray. My business is JPG Advisors, Operations Consulting. I'm an engineer by training. I started in the corporate world, moved my way up into general management, and through a couple different transitions. At one point, I was let go as a general manager of one business. And as I was looking for opportunities, including starting my own from scratch, I partnered up with an engineering service firm. That really got my foot a little more wet with some of the consulting side. And as part of that, I was actually hired by an accounting firm to start their consulting practice. And as that was growing, that firm broke up. And when it did, I got hired back in the corporate world, became another COO. And when that opportunity ended, I said, you know what, I'm going to create my own business. So I hung my own shingle up. Now, needless to say, I had some consulting experience, had some general management, I had a technical background, but, you know, I had, I guess, the business wherewithal. You know, I had created some business plans, even back in undergrad school for my senior project. So, I mean, I had an understanding what it would take to run a business. So, you know, I started on the ground floor from scratch. You know, some people say, well, consulting is a little different than running starting a manufacturing. It is a little different, but you still have to have a plan, and you still have to understand what it needs to run the business. So you have to have that, you know, the drive and understand the business aspect as well as the technical aspect, you know. So from my end of the consulting, it's more on the technical and the operational side. So I have to have that as a service side, but I also have to understand what it takes, you know, to pay the bills, and when I hire contractors and stuff like that, what it takes. So you have to have, you know, understand the full picture. And most people don't, but it is, and it'll come up, but, you know, and I think we even talked in the prelims, it is a learning experience. So yes. What you don't know, you can learn.
Perfect. Thank you. So Chris, can you tell us, you know, about, you know, who you are, what do you do, how long have you been doing it, and why you like to help people, you know, look at business ownership?
So our family was blessed to literally start a business from a mom and pop organization and successfully build it up to exiting the business to a private equity firm and to a publicly traded company. And after that happened, I realized there was a demand for business owners or individuals to either sell their business or acquire a business. And I realized that I could help them with that based on my professional experience and what our family business went through. So what I do now is, like I said, I help business owners either sell their business, or if they're looking to acquire a business or another business, or a completely separate business from what they operate. They may want to get into a totally different industry. There's all sorts of reasons why people will buy a business.
Mhm. Yeah, I think one of the interesting things too is that a lot of times people have a business. And I know Tracy will touch on this a little bit, but they want to leave a legacy for their kids. But then at some point in time, the kids go, "Yeah, no, thanks. We don't. I want to do my own business, right?" And so that's really what happens a lot of times after probably about 30 or 40 years is people want to exit their business and they need help in doing that.
Yes, only 30% of the business when you're looking at that actually sell to a family member or an internal person within the business. Most businesses end up selling to a third party. And one of the reasons, like you express, is when the parents are ready to transition the business, or the business owner is, the family member's name might not want to be in the business, or they see all the struggles that happen and they prefer just to work for somebody else.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks. So Tracy, tell us who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing it, and why you went into business for yourself.
My name is Tracy Rickman. I am a franchise consultant with FranNet. I am a franchise owner as well. So FranNet is a franchise and I own a territory. If you would have told me 20 years ago I'd own my own business, I'd believe you. Always something I wanted to do. If you told me as a franchise, I would have laughed, kind of thought it was, about ice cream, and then I would probably own a Dairy Queen because I love ice cream. So what's better? But the role of the owner of a Dairy Queen is investing about $500,000 and then hiring high school students to run that investment. So not necessarily a good fit for me. I'm a chemist by degree. So when I looked at business ownership, I thought it had to do something with my degree or my resume. And luckily franchising found me. Someone from FranNet called and I almost hung up on him because I thought it was fast food and 1 hour martinizing. But there's over 4,000 franchises in 90 different industries. And it's really about fit, those transferable skill sets and what it is you're trying to achieve. So for me, I love consultative selling. I love problem solving, very similar to what I was doing in my chemical background. And luckily I found FranNet, and here I am 16 years later. My husband and I own 3 different franchise brands. And about 2 years ago, we started an independent business to feed one of those brands as well.
Yeah. I also forgot to mention at any time that you have a question, please feel free to type it in. And I will, ask it. Because these guys are just really willing to share all of their knowledge. So, Jim, funding is always a big issue for a lot of people. How did you fund going into your business?
Well, it's not as capital intensive as some of the businesses that, we've already discussed, but, like you buy into any even a simple franchise. But I had, again, the business background. I figured I at least needed 6 to 9 months worth of, cash that I'd have no income. So I had, partly from my savings that I had a runway to go with. And so if somebody was looking to start a consulting, business from scratch right now, and they weren't looking to get a nice office suite or anything like that, work from home, figure you're going to need, 6 months to a year of, expenses, what you were going to take out, what, replace your income. So yeah, my funding, was self-funded, savings, but it wasn't capital intensive, but,
But you were smart and
Yeah.
made sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I'm just curious, did you, a lot of times people think that they could get a grant or an SBA loan. Is that possible when you're starting your own business to have enough money to start your business? I mean, it's not much, right? To fund make sure you have your funds to live on.
Other than COVID, forget about grants. Okay. That is not a way to fund your businesses. Okay. And, 2 other panelists here are more experienced in terms of seeing where funding comes in. Banks I do a lot with banks. Okay, there are a referral source for me, so I know how the banking industry works. They will not fund a startup if it doesn't have some kind of asset. All right, and buying a franchise because you're buying a brand or you're buying an existing business has some assets. But starting something from scratch, be it a consulting firm or if I was starting my own manufacturing business, there's no assets. A bank's not going to lend me money. So you're not going to get funding from the outside. You get it from really, as I say, the 3 F's: family, friends, and fools. Fools are usually ex-family or soon to be ex-friends. Okay?
Yes.
Nobody's going to lend you money if you don't have anything, to start with.
Okay, great. Chris, how do your clients fund their business typically?
Well, generally, most people, if they're looking to buy a business, they already identified what they want to do, whether it be a franchise or they're going to buy a family member's business. So there is an asset there that the banks will loan against or at least use for collateral. They still have to come up with their own funds to a certain degree. SBA requires that when you do a loan with them. I agree, family and friends is, depending on the business, is a big source of funding for individuals from that standpoint. And the other way is now you have the ability to borrow against your retirement funds through a program, and then you have to pay it back over time, but you're not taxed on that as far as for early withdrawal. But there are programs that allow people who are looking at businesses to do that, to use that as money to start their business.
What about, I think, owner financing? Does that come into play ever?
Yeah, it does happen occasionally. From the standpoint, you'll be able to, owner will finance everything. Those are opportunities probably few and far between, but owners will finance part of the business. So if you're buying a business for $1 million, they may be willing to finance half of it, where you have to pay them back over time to do that. That is certainly an option to do that. Or if you win the lottery, you could buy your own business. You don't have to worry about it, but that's not always a good plan either.
Yeah, probably if I won the lottery, I might think, well, I don't know how hard I got to work now. That's why it wouldn't be a good idea for me at any rate. So Tracy, how about you? How have you funded your business, and how do some of your clients fund their businesses?
I think I need to start playing the lottery. So I'll start there. I got to play to win, right? So clients, I'll do a little bit of everything. So there are ways to use, as Chris had mentioned, 401k and IRAs, tax and penalty free, including paying yourself a salary if you want to do something along those lines. We're seeing a little bit of portfolio diversification, where people are possibly taking a loan against maybe some of their investments. We're seeing HELOCs a lot, especially with home prices going up. Typically, you're going to need to come to the table with about 25 to 30% of your own skin in the game. And then SBA loans are readily available in the franchise industry because there's history. Sometimes banks even put aside money for a franchise system to work with. So it really just depends on what you're looking at and the type of business.
Okay, great. And just for people that don't, understand the lingo, sometimes a HELOC is a home equity line of credit. I would have been right there probably, 10 years ago too. What should I say? So, if you're going to get an SBA, you are going to need at least 25 to 30% down. And you're also going to be able to show them that you have enough money to live on for the next year. So, Jim, from your point of view, what are some of the disadvantages from starting a business from scratch?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing is probably building a brand. What are you recognized for? I mean, it's because you're starting from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
If you're buying an existing business, they have a history, good or bad. They have a history. You're buying a franchise. It's got a brand. That's usually why you buy a franchise, because it has a brand. There's something associated with it. Okay. Starting from scratch, be it consultant, be it in manufacturing, be it a restaurant, you've got to build the brand. And, the one thing that I have learned being in business for 20 some odd years I've been, marketing is a big part of it. And branding is a key. So if you're starting from scratch, one of the things is you're going to have to build that brand for whatever industry, whatever. You got to build the brand, as well as the other disadvantage is building the systems. Okay. Now, my background being an engineer, operations, and that's what I do a lot of consulting on, is building internal systems. So that was a natural for me. So the one thing I guess I had to learn, and I still learn now, even my bit, is building my brand and keeping that out in front. So the biggest disadvantage of your starting from scratch, build the brand, build your internal systems. Those don't come with it. So you got to build those two things.
No roadmap, huh?
Yeah. The advantage, it's the lowest cost to start with, but you don't have the other two. So
Okay. Yeah, perfect. So Chris, what would you say is some of the disadvantages for your clients when they're buying an existing business?
Oh, when they're buying an existing business, the disadvantages to that would be they first have to identify what business they want to do. There's so many business opportunities out there, whether they be franchises. So they need to narrow that down. And if they don't do that, it's not going to be a pleasant process, because they might find something that they're really not interested in, or after they buy the business and start it, they realize that, this was the wrong decision. So doing a lot of due diligence up first is important to avoid a lot of issues when you're looking at acquiring a business. Some of the other disadvantages is, it's not a quick get rich proposition. It's going to take time, effort, sweat equity, and you have to make sure that your family's okay with that, because personal experience from running and building a business, and you're going to spend more time building your business than you are spending time with your family. So you have to realize that going into it from that standpoint. And the building that brand and making sure that you don't do anything along the way to mess that up, that can be important too. Those are just some of the disadvantages of buying a business. But there are some advantages, because if you do get it right to business to buy it, you enter the market quickly. You don't have to start it from scratch, which can take a lot of money and a lot of time and more effort. So you really need to look at what you want to do and what type of business.
Yeah, I actually just started working with a client this week that he had been looking for an existing business, but he's been looking for 2 years because he doesn't know what he wants. So I said, why don't you take our entrepreneur profile and let's at least narrow it down, because you're trying to find a needle in a haystack when you don't even know what you want to do. So sometimes that might help some of your clients too, if they're thinking about business ownership and they just don't know what they want to do, because it is confusing. Just in as much as having over 4,000 franchises to choose from, you have to help people narrow it down to one franchise.
Yeah, I try to get the people to do an acquisition profile, what you're looking for. And then you can start your search and see what falls within the guardrails of what your profile is.
Yeah, very good. Tracy, so what are some of the disadvantages of buying? And we are going to go back around and talk quickly about advantages also, but what would you say are some of the disadvantages of buying a franchise?
Sometimes I think it's not as simple as you think. right? So I can't tell how many people come to me and say, I want to own a Chick-fil-A because, you know, there's lines around the door every time I go. People confuse the role of the owner with the function of the business. And just because the function of the business looks good doesn't mean it's good for the role of the owner. And there's rules. So there's rules in franchising. Believe it or not, McDonald's is not interested in my recipe for hamburger, even though it tastes better. So
Yeah, believe
sometimes
it.
people think that they can have all the, you know, here's this business I'm buying, it's really great, but I can do whatever I want. And that's not necessarily true in franchising. You got to follow the system. That's what you're buying. So finding the one that fits for you. So there could be a little bit of a disadvantage there.
Yeah, you know what I like too that you just said is that, you know, when people come to us and they want to talk about going to business because they want to work for themselves, you know, they don't want somebody telling them what to do. I always have to remind them, just so you know, your employees are usually, you know, in charge, and definitely the government is in charge because they get a piece of everything. So you're never exactly in business for yourself, right? Fortunately with franchises, you're in business, you know, again, as much for yourself as any other entity, but you're not in business by yourself. So Jim, advantages of owning your own consulting business.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the primary, by creating my own, it's my system, my brand. Initially, it's the least expensive. Okay. Yeah, consulting is probably, it's got less capital than most any other business starting because it's based on, you know, my expertise and stuff like that versus, you know, building, you know, new equipment, a building or whatever. You know, even if you know, and I've never had employees. I've always have a group of subcontractors that I work with as I expand. But again, that's probably the biggest advantage. It's mine, you know, my brand, my system, and initially the least expensive way. So I guess that would be my 3 advantages to start with.
So what I hear is that the advantage is well, the disadvantage was that you have to create all of those. But then on the flip side, the advantage is you got to create all of those.
Yes. I mean, but again, it's give and take work, you know.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Chris, I know you gave a couple. Is there anything else you would like to add to advantages of buying an existing business?
Well, you know, some industries or businesses, that's the only way to get into the industry is to buy into it, buy an existing company.
Such as, I don't know if you can share or not.
Well, there could be some that are real niche businesses, or they have a set proprietary software or information, something that's unique to them. That's to go to recreate that would cost you too much, and it's really would prevent. It protects the buyer of the building or the industry that, you know, you're coming into it from a standpoint that there's a lot of barriers to entry. So if you buy into a business that's specific, there's not a whole lot of people within that industry. So the uniqueness is sometimes a benefit to buying into it that way versus trying to start it from scratch.
Okay. And hopefully technically another advantage is that funding is a little bit easier just because you have hopefully a positive cash flow. And I think another advantage is sometimes, which can also be a disadvantage, but sometimes you have employees to start with right away. You know, I know it can go both ways, but you know, sometimes businesses have built goodwill and those kinds of things, which is also advantage. And many times when people buy an existing business, they hopefully can be taking a paycheck right away, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that's one of the advantages, even though the cost is usually a little bit.
ROI or return on investment is usually a shorter time period.
Okay, perfect. Tracy, advantages of buying a franchise.
It's a system, right? And it's already proven. So it's not necessarily is it a good system or not. Most franchises have good systems. It's finding the right one for you and what fits what you're trying to do. That again, transferable skill sets. So the other nice thing about franchising is that it's regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and I'm not one that's usually for government regulations. But in this case, there's a document called the Franchise Disclosure Document, or FDD, that every franchisor has to have. So it's a very transparent way to investigate a business opportunity, as well as validating with current owners across the country who are going to share their likes, their dislikes. How was the training? How's the support? How much money are you making? A lot of information there that makes franchising kind of this very unique scenario where you can judge your success based on past people's successes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I try to recommend to my clients to talk to somebody that's been in business a year, 5 years, 10 years, somebody that's not doing well, somebody that's doing average, and somebody that's knocking it out of the ballpark. That way you have a whole cross section. And typically, when you're talking to that person that's not doing well, they readily admit somehow that it's because they're not following the system. So it is a great way of being able to check with other people. We were talking a little bit earlier about an entrepreneurial mindset, and I just thought I'd love to have each one of you give us, what do you think someone needs to, what is an entrepreneurial mindset, Jim?
Willingness to take chances. And I guess it would be, and chances are, chances are a risk, but it's educated or understood risk. Okay. But it's a drive, a willingness to learn, and even as I've done in my consulting practice, it's the options out there that I see. So I like the options. I like to see things. It's doing something new. So it's just, I don't know. I take it as a whole breadth of a whole bunch of different experiences.
Okay, good, thanks. Chris?
Well, I think you have to have grit. It's one of the things to do it. And I mean, there's a lot of things that go into the entrepreneurial spirit. People write books on why be an entrepreneur, but I think you have grit, you have to have determination, you have to be thick-skinned. You have to not be a quitter and realize things are going to be tough, but you also have to have a plan. And that's one of the things as far as franchise, they help you because it's sort of designed with a system in place, but you got to have a plan to make it successful.
Yeah, very true. Thank you. Tracy?
As we were talking about earlier, I think that it's a healthy disregard for status quo, right? You don't stay there. So you're probably a lifelong learner in some aspect. I know I'm still learning every day, still learning. And then you're driven. And, I think, Jim, when we were talking earlier, you had mentioned it's not necessarily about the almighty dollar. And I agree. I don't think you're driven just to be successful or to make a lot of money, but you're driven maybe for a lifestyle or something that the business affords you that corporate America does not. And for that reason alone, I think I'm completely unemployable. Like, I just don't think I could ever go back to the constraints of a job.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, too, one of the things that we had talked about that nowadays it's really income security is an advantage to going into business for yourself, right? There is no job security. It doesn't matter how good you do in your job. It just doesn't. That's all there is to it. It happened to my brother-in-law last week. Worked 26 years for a company, and he came in, and they were bought out by someone, and they wanted to reduce the workforce, and so they said, well, we're going to let you go. So there just is and it's a shock. It shouldn't be a shock anymore. But it's a shock because you never think it's going to be you. So exploring business ownership is a great way to help yourself maybe have income security. So we talked a little bit about this, I think, already, but you know, what are some things, and this is more Tracy and Chris, you know, what are some things that people need to do to determine if a business is a good fit or for them? You know, what, you know, Chris, your clients, what do you help them do to look at, is this business the right fit? Tracy, we'll start with you, Chris.
So if I'm working on the buy side of it, where we're trying to find a particular company for someone, I spend a lot of time up front with them to talk about what their goals are, what they want to do, what their commitment is, how long do they want to own a business, because you have to start, when you're looking at buying a business, you have to look at your exit at some point in time and plan for that right in the beginning. And I also work with them from their financials to make sure that what they have to invest and what they're looking for match from that standpoint, and realize that, as Jim said, you know, you have to have a little bit of a treasure chest there to keep things going, and you need to realize what the expenses are up front from that standpoint. And if it's an existing business owner trying to buy another business, I usually start with the financials there to make sure that this is something that they want to do. This makes sense for them. There's synergies to their current business are some of the things that I would say.
Oh, great. Are there people that you would have them, you know, like Tracy had mentioned the FDD, are there ways people can validate the business?
As far as, you mean value it or
Not value it, but you know, I imagine when someone's looking to buy a business, an existing business, you can't necessarily always go to the employees, because the employees don't always know that the business is being sold until after it's done, right?
That's correct.
So what are some other ways that when you're looking to buy a business, can you, who do you talk to, or how do you talk to somebody to find out if that is, you know, ask questions like of people?
I think you're talking about due diligence.
Due diligence. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so there's, you know, due diligence when you're buying, and there's also due diligence when you're selling. Obviously, the due diligence on when you're buying is, again, the financial side, the industry, how much time and money you're willing to commit to it. Does it match your expertise from the standpoint of what the business you're trying to buy? What are your motives? Is it more just an investment where you're going to have someone else manage it for you, and then you're going to, you know, you'll be the owner of the business, or are you planning on running it yourself? You know, those are all things that you have to ask yourself in the due diligence process. And when you're looking at buying a business,
is there a way to find out if there are hidden reasons for the business owner selling?
no, generally the biggest reason for most business owners are selling is generally still retirement. That's over 60% of the businesses that are sold out there. That's the number one reason why, from that standpoint. But whether it's on the buy side or the sell side, that's a question that either party should be asked or be willing to provide an answer for, why they're selling it or why they want to buy your business.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, because I know the seller cares. It's his baby. So he wants to make sure he's selling it to somebody that is going to carry on their name and their
Legacy.
Their legacy. Thank you. You know, that I forgot about that part, how important it is to a business owner that's selling their business. Tracy.
I guess going back to the original question, the first thing to do is separate the role of the owner from the function of the business. Many times people think, as we mentioned with the Chick-fil-A, that, you know, they're just going to be able to sit in the back room and count money. And, you know, this line, I'm going to make all this money. Going to realize that the owner of a Chick-fil-A is working in that store. typically 45 to 50 hours a week, saying it's my pleasure to give you those chicken nuggets, whether you're nasty to me or not. So it's separating that kind of role and really focusing on what you're looking to achieve. So you're picking the right business opportunity. And then of course, doing your due diligence, talking to other owners and making sure that what they're creating is fitting the effort that you're looking to put into the business.
Okay, we do have a question here. Let me just, so Aaron, he has a franchise he is looking to purchase. I have received the FDD. Additionally, I have received full disclosure authorization to reach out to the individual franchisees to request their information that the FDD doesn't disclose. This is a huge advantage, as I can get information based upon similar markets and storefronts to include in your application and such, your loan application. Yes, you are right, Aaron. That is such a huge advantage. And one of the reasons why in the loan application, people are, the banks are willing to loan money. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so from your experience, and I know it's difficult, especially Chris, for you, but if you can kind of ballpark it, how long would you say it takes to, turn a profit or, have enough money left so that you're not dipping into your savings or borrowing more money to live on? Would you say it's a year, 2 years, longer?
I would say at least in a year and a half to 2 years that you have either money set aside or you have access to money that you may need, because it may take that long for you just to understand the business, understand all the pitfalls, the learning mistakes that you're going to make along the way. From that standpoint, obviously certain businesses you buy, you can start pretty quickly as far as returning your profit or returning your investment on it. But for the businesses that may not have a good ROI, you want to make sure you have enough funding in the bank or access to funds to get you at least over a 2-year period.
Excellent, thank you. Jim, what would you say?
Well, again, your consulting being a low-cost capital, and yes, even though now I work out of my house, when I started, I actually got an office, but I predetermined I was going to need 6 to 9 months at least cash on hand to cover that. Yeah, I was fortunate enough that probably after 6 months, I was being able to take money out of the business beyond the expenses. But I had planned 6 to 9 months as a minimum to going
Excellent.
in that, so.
Okay, Tracy?
Boy, it depends.
Mhm.
I didn't have to say that, but the type of business obviously does the ramp up. So something that is owner operated, so it's your full-time effort. You don't have a lot of overhead. Think of a service business. Those can ramp up fairly quickly. I mean, you can start income producing in a couple months. Like Jim, I would say, a nice 6 to 9 month buffer is always nice, so you're not stressed. If you're looking at something that's retail focused, I mean, it could take 6 to 9 months to even find a location, much less build out. So in those instances, it's going to take closer to, a year and a half, like Chris mentioned. So it's really about aligning that business appropriately and then taking into consideration whatever you're looking to invest, that you're going to want to have some extra cash on hand for living expenses.
Yeah, good point. That's one of the questions that we always ask our clients is, if you could pick a date for your business to be open, is it in 3 months, 6 months, a year? Everybody's different. And, if you're looking for brick and mortar, then, it's definitely going to be probably a year, and you need to plan for that time period. So, and if it's a service business and you don't need brick and mortar, then you can probably open that business within, 60 to 90 days. So great. So one of the other things that we were talking about earlier was, how do you help people over the fear? All of us, well, we've even experienced it ourselves because we're all business owners. So I just thought it would be great if we could help some of the people that are online tonight. How do you finally decide that this is what I want to do and all of those things? Chris?
Well, that could be a loaded question too, because there's really no easy way sometimes to take that leap of faith. But I do think the more planning you do on the front end of it, the more successful you'll be in the process, whether it's acquiring a franchise, acquiring another business, or even starting up a business. The more you plan, the more successful you'll be.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. You do really need to plan. Sometimes though, people allow their planning to stop their opening. And a lot of that because they're afraid that the plan isn't perfect. So there's, like you said, there's that balancing of knowing that you have the plan in place and that this will work and it will need some adjustments. Jim, what would you say?
I definitely the planning, but life in general is fearful. And I guess one of the things about the way things are right now, the turmoil and stuff like the economy, just like having a job. And I get, yes, I was a generation when I first went into corporate, everybody was, the 30 years and out. And I wasn't brought up that way. And I knew when I first walked in and I saw the people I was working, I says, I can never picture myself 30 years. So I was always thinking, where's the next step going to be? So I guess I didn't have, not knowing what tomorrow may bring, but I guess that was by nature. So not to say I've never been fearful of anything, but it's just, I guess, part of the nature. I guess that's part of the entrepreneurial thought pattern. Mm-hmm. And when I've talked to other businesses and I've consulted with people starting businesses and stuff, I says, think of a failure as a learning experience. And our score mentor can reconfirm the statistics on failures out there. But I have read, what I've heard, the true successful entrepreneur is somebody who has failed 4 times.
Well, that's not good.
What a failure might be, not a full-fledged business failure, but they have failed something, So, failure I've always taken is a learning experience.
Okay,
So
well, that's a good.
Afraid of failing at something.
Yeah.
It's not always good, but
it is what it is. And one of the things that Chris, you said earlier that I thought was pretty powerful is that fear is a motivator for some people. Fear, when you're using fear as a motivation, what would you say? How does that motivate people?
Well, I think, the fear that, that you don't want to fail, that you can do it. And that failure may be a little bit of peer pressure too. But it has to be, funneled the proper way. It's just not, someone's holding a gun to your head. You just fearful that, hey, you have to work hard. If you don't, it's not going to happen. You got to put the hours in. If I don't, it's not going to happen. And you're going to, give up things along the way or sacrifice things along the way. And knowing that that's going to happen, all those things can help motivate as far as the fear factor a little bit.
Yeah, I like that because it's a motivator or it's a paralyzer, right? And you have to decide which it's going to be for you. Yeah. Tracy?
I have a little analogy I usually use with clients, because when people start looking at business ownership, they're very excited. And they're like, this is great. I'm so excited. Can't wait to get started. And I always tell people it's true, but the closer we get to the finish line, the scarier it's going to get. And most time people are like, oh, Posh, that's not going to happen. And I would say it's a little bit like a scary movie. And for me, because I'm not a scary movie fan, it goes back to my high school days with the original Friday the 13th. So think about you're with all your friends and you're at camp and you're, frolicking. There's a little bit of stuff going on. And then somebody disappears. But it's always, and forgive me, Therese, it's always the blonde girl. And people are like, oh, she's just lost. And then another person, is missing. And now there's a dead body or blood. And then the mayhem ensues. And it's scary. But at the end, somebody always survives. And I'm going to tell you, I always tell my clients, you're going to survive. And you can survive this process and choose, yes, I'm going to go into business ownership, or no, I'm not. But whatever the answer is, we want it to be something that you're very confident in so that you don't have the regrets in a few years that you didn't start the business. And like Chris said, I think the fear can be a motivator. And the way I used fear in the beginning when we started our business was the only thing I could control was my business. I couldn't control what was going on in corporate America. I couldn't control what my boss wanted me to travel to. I could control my business. And I use that fear as a motivator to get that going.
Very good. So I didn't have any other questions. I don't know if there's anything else our panelists would like to offer, or if people have questions. Erin, I would like to say if you need any help and exploring your franchise a little more, please reach out. Anita, you have all of our information, correct, that you're going to share with people in case they...
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I was going to say, we don't have a lot of people. I could have let them talk and ask questions. If you're willing to do that, I'll just go through and let them all talk if they want to.
Yep, I think that would be great.
So those of you who are attending, all you have to do is unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment.
Okay, Shanice.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm here listening. Thank you so much.
No problem. Amber?
Yes, hi, I'm Amber Snyder, and I wonder if you don't have friends and family that can help with the financing or funding, like what are other avenues?
Well, we mentioned, if you have a home and you have some equity into it, you could use your home. You can also use, if you have a 401k from where you work, you can use that penalty-free and tax-free. You can also, if you have any investments, sometimes people borrow against the investments. Anything else? Did I miss anything? Anybody?
We covered it.
I have to say that I'm always reluctant to tell people to use their 401ks because of the rate of failure of small businesses. It's really a high risk. And if you lose your retirement, it's hard to build that back.
It is. And on the other hand, sometimes people need to look at how much money they have in their retirement. And, if you're, 55 and it's only $100,000, that wasn't going to last you very long. And you might want to bet on yourself, especially, I think, if you're going into franchising, because, you have the ability to do enough due diligence that you are going to be successful should you do all the due diligence and make sure that you know what you're getting into. But I hear you loud and clear.
No, I agree. I think a franchise is a much lower risk than going into business for yourself.
Other questions?
Any comments?
Yeah.
You know what? I'll give you a little, background too, Anita. Like you, I was always raised, don't use your 401k, don't use your retirement funds. When it came time to do business, though, we did use it. And I used the 401k rollover process. And from that, because you can reinvest that tax and penalty free, that's really how my husband and I afforded to purchase for businesses. And now that is becoming an incredible tax shelter over the next few years. My husband's a little bit older than me, so when we get ready to sell, all that money kind of can go right back into it. So it was a great growth opportunity for us. So I always tell folks to, investigate, talk to your financial planner, look at things, make the decision for yourself. But sometimes it really can be actually a growth for your 401k or your retirement funds.
Yeah, well, I agree on that, particularly for franchises, but again, what you all have said, I would strongly endorse, and that is planning before you do anything, and particularly having a good financial plan makes a tremendous difference in how successful you can be. And also understanding the market for your industry is very important.
Yes, very true. And we have some funding partners that we refer our clients to, just so that they can get the whole overview on what might be a best way for them to fund their business. Because a lot of times, people don't know how they want to fund their business. And if you go to the local bank, they're going to tell you about the ways that they can fund your business, not necessarily what all the options are. And so that's why it's nice to talk to someone outside of a bank. There's nothing wrong with banks. We encourage banks, but you want to talk to someone that has all the options available, so that you're as educated about that option as you are about going into whatever business it is that you're choosing.
I think we'd be remiss, Teresa, if we didn't turn around and plug SCORE too. So if you have questions, SCORE is such a great resource, not only educational resources on things that you might be lacking, but for things like putting together a financial plan, looking at your marketing, understanding your market share. So don't just reach out to, all of those professional people. Look at SCORE too, great resources.
Yeah.
Well, we are free.
Yeah, and then there's that, right?
Well, and not only are you free, you're experienced.
And we are experienced. We have people who, and particularly now, because we have a number of mentors who actually are still working, and particularly in the digital marketing area. So we do have a lot of expertise, and I think we can do a lot to help clients. And we're always happy to do that. We're never successful unless our clients are.
Yes. And I would like to mention too that, Franet, if you use us as a consultant, we don't charge our clients either. Our services are at no charge. So it really gives people the opportunity to explore franchise business ownership in a safe environment, where we're really coaching people through a process to learn if business ownership is a good fit for them or not.
Yeah, and we do refer people to Franet for that very reason, because you don't charge them anything, and it's a great opportunity for them to get a feel for what's available, what industries seem to be growing, etc. So it's a good referral for us.
Yes, thank you, and we appreciate it.
There's one positive that people, when they're looking at businesses and starting a business, I read somewhere that only 2% of the small businesses make over $1 million a year. So that means 98% of the businesses make less than that, which means there's a lot of small businesses out there that are very successful and can have a good living at.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot that are marginal as well. And it's a spectrum. You have some that are extremely successful. As I said, approximately 50% are out of business in 5 years. So those are the ones probably didn't do adequate planning. One of the biggest failures is if you start a business and you don't have background in that business and knowledge about operations, you're setting yourself up to fail. So it's really important to understand what your skills are. Use resources that are available for advising you as to where your skills fit. Funding is important because if you go out on a limb and you don't make it, you're going to end up leaving yourself in the hole somewhere. So, but planning is such an important thing. And I think we've all emphasized that.
Yep.
So I think this has been an excellent discussion. I hope that those of you who have attended find that it has been useful. We did live stream it to our YouTube channel. So if you want to listen to the discussion again, we'll be sending that out. And I want to thank you all for participating, all the panelists and Therese particularly for putting things together. So, and hope that you all have a pleasant remainder of your evening.